Mabuhay, this is Bob from Love Beyond the Sea. This is a channel about marital love, and I married a Filipina back in 2015, and I know every day I have to be loving, and I have to know what that means, and the world doesn't really hear much about this, and there's a lot of confusion. So I've been using gotquestions.org to make an additional video to the ones I'm making to talk about love, so I can sink in and kind of get the idea of what that means. It's a very lofty thing, by the way. From gotquestions.org, what is love? What is love? Well, in the short time I have, I will try to read this answer, and we'll try to make many more over time. Love can be a challenge to define at the level of how a person experiences it. Love can involve personal affection, sexual attraction, platonic admiration, brotherly loyalty, benevolent concern, or worshipful adoration. To accurately answer the question, what is love, we need to go to the origin of love. The Bible tells us that love originates in God. Also tells us that God is love. In the English language, the word love is forced to bear the burden of a multitude of meanings. We love everything from pancakes to parents, but in vastly different ways. The languages in which the Bible was written, Hebrew and Greek, are more precise in that they utilize different words for the different types of love. The ancient languages differentiate between sexual, brotherly, and familial love, and also the kind of love that God has for creation and that we may have for him. The Hebrew word, and I may not be pronouncing these right, the Hebrew word yada and the Greek word eros are the words used to describe sexual love. For example, Genesis 38, Judah makes love with a woman he assumes is a prostitute. In the original Hebrew of verse 26, the word is yada, to know. And in this context, to know carnally or to have sexual intercourse with. In the New Testament, the Greek word eros is not found because there is no context in which it might be used. The second type of love is the brotherly love that exists between close friends regardless of gender. There is no sexual connotation. It is the love for and by a friend. The Hebrew word is ahaba, and it is used to describe the love between David and Jonathan in 1 Samuel 20, verse 17. Some have said of a certain persuasion, well, that means they were having a homosexual relationship. But that's not what was up with David and Jonathan. In fact, it said that his love for Jonathan exceeded that of a woman. Now, we'll talk about that one of these days, too. I think that's fascinating. But this is brotherly love. They had a very strong bond of brotherly love. And the Greek word for brotherly love or affection is phileo, as used to refer to friendship. John 15, Romans 12, or Hebrews 13. Of family or tribal love, the Hebrew word is once again ahaba, indicating a deep affection. The Greek word is storge. We find ahaba throughout the Old Testament because of its broad range of meanings, but the Greek word storge is only found in the New Testament as a negative word, astorgos or astorgos, meaning without natural love. See 2 Timothy 3:3. Finally, there is the Hebrew word chesed and the Greek word agape, which are used to express the kind of love that God demonstrates toward his elect. Chesed is often translated as steadfast love or loving kindness. A good example of chesed is found in Numbers 14:18. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, forgiving iniquity and transgression. That would be a good way to regard your spouse in marriage, by the way. God's chesed love is why he never gives up on those he has adopted as his children. Throughout the Old Testament, God's people repeatedly fell into idolatry and sin, yet he always preserved remnant, never gave up on his people. The reason is chesed love. So when I read these fine articles from gotquestions.org relative to love, I'm just going to read them. I might not even read all of it for time, but gotquestions.org, you can put in search and search for all kinds of things. I trust what I've read from them. Very little, if any, disagreement on my part. I think they do a great job, and we should always be learning about love. All of these are good for marriage. You know, the sexual love, of course, I think that's pretty important. How that works in an age gap relationship, your mileage may vary, but, eros, brotherly love, deep affection, friendship, love, all of those things apply in marriage. So if you have any thoughts, let me know what you think about this topic of love. What is love? Really is best observed than defined. When you see it, you probably have said, boy, that's a loving act, sacrifice. God, or a guy like that football player almost drowned, jumping into, some body of water to save his drowning children. And you say right away, wow, that's incredible. What was that? Well, you know intuitively what it was. It was called love. And we'll keep learning about that here on Love Beyond the Sea.